and welcome to GBH Amplifies, the Bay State Banner. I am your host, Ron Mitchell, and we are here at GBH's Newsfeed Cafe in the main branch of the Boston Public Library. So I want to welcome you guys for viewing. We have a live audience, as you can hear, and I want to welcome everybody here in the live audience. Thank you for joining us as we film this wonderful program. Today, we are discussing the impact of the recent elections on state, local, and national issues. Today, our guests are the new city councilors elected in this past election. To my right, we have City Council President Ruth C. Lugine. To her right, City Councilor at Large Henry Santana. To my left, City Councilor at Large Julia Mejia. And last but certainly not least, the newly elected District 7 City Councilor, Reverend Minyard Culpepper. I want to thank all of you for being here. Congratulations, Minyard. So I'm going to start off. We're going to get to you, Minyard, in just 1 second. But I want to start off with the City Council President, Ruth Lugine. And I want to ask you, it's been a very, very challenging year. You know, in fact, let me recap just a little bit. Let's take a look at what's been going on in the country. So today is our first day after the 43-day government shutdown. Yesterday, for folks who are at home watching, last night, Trump signed the legislation that ended the shutdown. 7 Democrats and 1 independent caucused with the Republicans and voted to stop the shutdown. Despite not requiring any Obamacare subsidy extensions to be incorporated into the legislation, the Democratic leadership wanted this requirement as a requirement to end the shutdown. So the Democratic leadership nationally is very concerned and upset about the shutdown, about the solution to the shutdown, because it doesn't really provide any help for the Obamacare subsidies, which are going to be rising. Well, without the subsidies, everybody's premium is going to rise substantially. So on that, with that situation upon us now that the shutdown has ended, and SNAP is going to be reinstated and all the employees are going to be reinstated who were fired, we also have the Trump administration sending ICE agents to different democratically governed cities, including Boston, to run into churches and churches and schools, as well as Home Depot parking lots around the country to try to round up what they refer to as undocumented people. As the Trump administration every week also tries to cancel any path to legal immigration that they can. So these are the kind of climate that all of you good folks were elected under. And it is definitely a concern to many of us here in Boston and around the country. So on that cheerful note, I'm going to start with you, City Council President. As you look to the next session coming up in a few weeks, or coming up, as you look to the new session coming up this year, what is on the top of your agenda for the City Council?
Thank you so much for that question, Ron, and thank you for making it very clear the weight of the issues that we have to deal with locally. I first want to say thank you for the introduction. I'm Ruth Lugine, President of the City Council, and I want to say thank you to the Bostonians who voted in the election just over a week ago, and for voting for me and that vote of confidence, topping the ticket resoundingly with your support. I'm very grateful. But there's a lot of work to do. What's happening in Washington is connected to what's happening here in the city of Boston. When we talk about our residents who face food insecurity, the cuts to SNAP, and using the most vulnerable among us as political, as pawns on a political chessboard, was not helpful to anyone, and it actually hurt our residents. And so I'm grateful for all of the people who gathered, who did the work of convening to make sure that we were doing everything we could to stand in the gap of our residents who are facing food insecurity. From our mayor, from Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll and Governor Healy, to Congressman Ayanna Pressley, convening us at Dorchester Food Co-op. Food insecurity is a real issue, and it's one that we're going to continue to work on. But it's not just food insecurity, it's about affordability, and that's what we're seeing. The deal that was cut on the national level, while it reinstates the federal government, air traffic controllers can get back to work, SNAP will no longer be in jeopardy, we do so at the risk of healthcare costs skyrocketing for our residents across the country, especially here in Boston. we'll see a lot of community health centers at risk because they're not receiving the funding that's necessary that comes as a result of these premiums. So we are going to face major challenges as a result of the decision that was made by the Democratic senators. And we feel that at the local level. We're talking about issues of affordability, and I started my career representing families facing eviction and foreclosure as a student at Harvard Legal Aid Bureau. Housing affordability in general is a number one issue when we're talking about housing, when we're talking about food. We have to pay people more, right? So we can do all of these programs, and we should be doing it to help people get more food, partnering with food pantries, doing everything we can to create affordable housing. But we also have to make sure that people are getting paid more. And so I'm proud of the work that I've done. I did this last term, passing an ordinance to prioritize affordable housing in formally operating city buildings. We're saying that we want to prioritize affordable housing in former schools and former city buildings that are no longer being used for their purpose. But we also want to explore the minimum wage. We also want to explore what it would look like to create a minimum wage for our city employees so that we can be an example to employers here in the city of Boston, so that we can create a floor of what we think is a living wage here in the city of Boston for our residents.
Well, Boston has always led in helping to make the lives of its residents more amenable and affordable. Boston is one of the most expensive cities in the country to live. We do know that as a fact, but the Boston community and the Boston City Council, as well as many members in public office, have worked hard, like you said, around the state and around our city to help provide assistance. So I'm very happy to see that Boston has continued to move forward in that way and support its residents so vigorously like we have historically. We want to kind of come back and drill down on some of those other things you mentioned. But before we do that, I want to come over here to Minyard Culpepper, our new city councilor for District 7. Welcome, Minyard. Congratulations.
Thank you, Ron, for allowing us to come and discuss issues that are faced in Boston. I agree with the council president with regard to housing. I campaigned as a housing expert, and I believe in what we call neighborhood stabilization. I think we have to stabilize neighborhoods. I talked during the campaign about a gentrification neutralization plan. Let me just say that again. Gentrification neutralization.
Gentrification neutralization.
Not
Okay.
doing away with gentrification. I don't think we can do away with it, but I think we can neutralize it based on existing resources that we already have in place. And so I agree 100% with our council president that we've got work to do. We've got a food pantry. In fact, tomorrow we'll give food out to 250 folks, right? That food will go in 2 hours. And then we'll have folks coming that
And this is at,
will not at the church.
Yes.
And so we raised $1,000 this past Sunday to buy additional foods, knowing that we're going to have additional folks that are coming. I was there 2 weeks ago, and one of the sad sights that I saw was folks coming to the food pantry. After the food was all gone, we had a big donation of eggs. We were giving out 2 dozen eggs to folks, and they were so excited just to get a dozen eggs. And so when you look at where we are now, we do, number one, make sure folks have a roof over their head, and then we want to make sure that they have food on the table, the basic necessities of life. And so I thank all of the residents in District 7 for the votes that I received, vote of confidence. Know that I'm going to the City Council to fight for you, to work for you, to help District 7 be the best that it can be. And I believe that District 7 is not only the most diverse district, but I think the potential that we have in District 7 to make Boston a better city for all of us lies right in District 7.
Can you share with us why you think you won, why you think why you think the voters of District 7 chose you? It was a hotly contested race and very, very close, as many of us know.
I think the resident in District 7, I think they looked at who had been doing the work that affects their life the most today. When it comes to housing, and you look at Academy Homes, it was Minyard Culpepper that transferred ownership to the Tenant Association. That's what I called, while I was at HUD, neighborhood stabilization. When you look at Canfield Estates in the South End, it's owned by the Tenant Association. All of those units, we demolished them, built them back brand new, transferred ownership to the Tenants Association. When you look at the apartments on Seaver Street, owned by the Tenants Association. And so I've been fighting for neighborhood stabilization all of my career. Even when I was the chief of staff for a member of Congress, she was chair of the subcommittee on housing. We focused on the empowerment zones. During the campaign, I talked about an empowerment zone around Nubian Square and Grove Hall to focus resources on those businesses that have been excluded for so long. And so when folks looked at who had been doing the work, when it came to youth violence, Minyard Culpepper was right in the midst of the young folks.
Yes, I do
Started the
recall
Trotter Park Peace Program. So they looked at who had been doing the work, who had a track record of doing the work, and who did the work even without being paid to do that work.
I know many folks only think of you as the minister, but obviously your time at HUD and all these other anti-violence programs you did during the 80s, when you literally stood in the breach, you called the gang members in, that's a large part of your history, and that seemed to prove well during your campaign and come out.
Absolutely, because I think people want to be able to look at someone that they can trust, that's going to fight for them, to fight for what's right, to help make the community a better community, and to unite the community.
Now I got a quick question for you.
Go on.
You know, in the team of rivals concept, you think you might consider working with some of those folks who ran against you and who you won against and try to move some of this?
I'm working with them now.
Okay.
Samuel Furtado is on my transition team. Saeed worked hard for me. When you look at Wawa is working with me on.
Wawa's last name?
No.
Wawa Bell.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes.
He's working on.
Just for the viewers who aren't as in the inner circle of the campaign. Yeah.
And so when you look at the four candidates that ran against me that were now supporting me, I'm going to work with all of them. And then they all ran a great campaign. If you looked at how close the vote was,
Yeah,
but the way they ran made me the better candidate. And so we all have skin in this game. We're all going to work together to make sure that all of their issues that they represented and fought for are part of what we are going to
Your
do in the
agenda that
next
you move
couple of
forward.
years. You know, Coach called me. We had a good conversation. We're going to have a lunch
Coach
with
Saeed,
some of
yes.
the folks. Yes. And so we're all in this game together. It's not a Minyard Culpepper. It's not he or me. It's about we. And when I campaigned, and I think that article in the Dorchester Reporter picked it up exactly the way we campaigned. It was a community campaign. When I looked at my campaign, I had every segment of the community involved in the campaign. And I think that's a winning campaign that can bring the community together in a way that we work on the issues, common issues. South End, Fenway, Roxbury, and Dorchester may have different issues, but there are issues in common that we can all work together to make District 7 a district where everyone is happy and can look to each other for support.
That is a great point. And that's a great transition, too, because now we're going to go and talk to Julia Mejia, who is City Councilor at Large. And for those of you who don't know, in your first campaign, you won that election by one vote.
Yes.
And they had a recall, and you still won that election by one vote. So for all the folks out there that think your vote don't matter, this is living proof that every single vote counts in the city of Boston. So I just want to say that.
Yes.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Especially now,
Yes.
when democracy is under attack, right? And so thank you for giving us the opportunity to be here. And yes, I just want to know for the record that it was 22,492 votes. And
Not one.
Not just
Not
one,
just
because I don't want people to think, God, only won by one vote. No, there was 22,492 votes after a recount. And what I'm really happy and proud of is that since then we have been consistent about how we run for office, right? And although I'm an incumbent, I ran my election this particular season very strategic because what I wanted to demonstrate is that the real power is within the people, right? So our campaign, we spent probably 3 times less than other campaigns, and we still finished in a very strong top 2 without political endorsements, without the establishment, really demonstrating that the real power lies with the people, because what we wanted to do is to demonstrate that people of color are paying attention and that we don't need political brokers to usher us in, like that we could do this based on hard work and organizing communities that have traditionally been left out, not just the super voters, right? And so this particular campaign season was really about demonstrating what the power of the people looks like, because the power of the people is really what's going to help us get through what's happening on the national scale, because we can't take a seat. And what I said to people on the campaign trail, even if you don't like any of us, put your own name on the ballot, but demonstrate that Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan is showing up to the polls and voting, because that's how then elected officials can't ignore us.
And now that you have been elected
And
for
now-
your, is it third or fourth term?
My fourth.
Your
So
fourth
this
term.
and it's every 2 years, so it's not like I'm a career politician either. So I just
But
wanna-
my question for you though, and I
Yeah.
don't mean to cut you off, but my question for you is, now that you have been reelected,
Yes.
and you have the power of the people behind you because of the way you campaigned, what are the things that you want to look towards in this next session that maybe you didn't get enough movement on, or that you didn't think was achieved in the
Yeah,
last session?
yeah.
What are the things on the top of your agenda?
So I'm going to publicly notice here that my goal for the next 2 years is to really build infrastructure for a co-governance model, which really relies on making sure that the people are participating in our policy making and developing that infrastructure for real power building.
Now
I think
explain that a little bit. a
So
little bit more.
co-governance is really this, it's an ideology where the real power lies with the constituents, not with the political power players, right? And so our goal really is, like, for example, we are working on an ordinance right now with a coalition. It was the coalition that helped design what the ordinance was going to look like, and we have been working with the coalition to shepherd it through the policymaking process. So building that muscle so that it's not just inside politics, that we're developing the infrastructure for outside game, because the real power, if we're really paying attention, has to be about listening to the constituents that we serve.
That's that inverted management style where you manage from the bottom
Right,
up.
exactly. We're deconstructing power. And so that's the goal, because right now the power is very concentrated. So we want to make sure that we're sharing power in ways that build more power for the people that we serve. So that's one thing. And as the only, right now on the Boston City Council, I'm the only mom with school-age children at BPS, and a single mom at that. So my goal right now in the Boston City Council for my next term is to be more aggressive around education issues. I was the first person in my family to graduate high school and college. I understand what it looks like when you have been left behind. So I am going to assume my role back into the education space and be incredibly aggressive around education issues. Whether I'm the chair or not, I am going to own that lane, because that's the lane that I came up in. And that's an area that we have a lot of work to do when it comes to public education, because that's the real equalizer. And then the other piece of the work that I'm going to be focusing on is around economic empowerment and the area of growth, because housing is the #1 crisis in the city of Boston. We're going to start working more aggressively with housing advocates to really push the agenda around housing issues. But again, going back to our governance style is what's going to help us move things along, because right now, the way we've been doing business in the city of Boston has not really represented the power of the people. It has been a few. And so I want to open it up to many now.
Got it. Well, that's a good goal, a very good goal. Thank you for sharing. I want to ask you really quickly, I know that last year, especially as you speak to the desire to be in that education lane, you were a major proponent for the renovation of Madison Park. You were a warrior on that, and we are all very concerned about what
Yes.
should be one of the state's most prominent vocational high schools living up to its opportunity for the students of Boston. Can you share some of your thoughts about what you feel about moving that renovation? I see you giggling. But,
Yeah. Well, because, I feel like because I'm a BPS graduate and a BPS mom, I'm tired of the wait your turn
Philosophy,
mentality
yep,
here,
yep,
right?
yep.
And so Madison Park is one of those gems that we have literally keep kicking the can down the road. And what that says to parents and to students is that not now. We're going to go this way. And I knew when we were trying to fight to reallocate some of the dollars from White Stadium to support Madison Park, we were told, well, we're going to go through the Massachusetts the state, what do you call it? Yeah, we're going to go that route, right? So I just feel like we do a lot of this, and we just need to commit and say, here's what we're gonna allocate X amount of dollars to Madison Park. And we're not going to continue with these delay tactics, because what that does, it gives people a waiting pattern. And Madison Park, we need to make those investments, and we need to make it now, and we need to start thinking more
And
strategically.
all of those kids who are in that school now are losing out on the quality of education
exactly.
they should have.
And we need to start focusing on promoting all of the amazing work that's happening in that building, right? We have media, we have cosmetology, we have automotive, we have the building trades, we have a state-of-the-art Voc Tech school that right now it's a dumping ground, and so we need to reallocate and change. And then the last thing I'll say is that there was this whole initiative to try to move the O'Brien, right, the O'Brien Exam School from Roxbury to West Roxbury. And so when it comes to equity issues, particularly in Black and brown communities, we as a council have to be incredibly aggressive at making sure that we are fighting and doing all that it's within our power to support Black and brown communities.
Well, the John D. O'Brien issue was definitely one that was on the top of our list at the banner when that proposal came up to move it, and I'm glad that it wasn't moved, and I'm glad that many of the folks on this dais here pushed back on that particular proposal.
Absolutely.
I'd like to move over now to you, Henry Santana, City Councilor at Large. Thank you for being here, Henry.
Thank you.
First question, how's Mom doing?
My mom is doing great.
I know
she's
cancer
doing great.
survivor.
She has, a great family, a supportive family. She's a fighter. So, I'm very blessed to have her as a mom, and she's doing well. Thank you.
Well, I'm so glad. So now, moving on to the topic at hand. You've always been a large proponent for support for immigrant families and children. And under the current attacks from the administration and the ICE agents that, as I said in the beginning, are running into schools and churches and any place they can to pick up or round up what they view as undocumented workers and undocumented residents, again, as they remove, they being the administration, as many pathways to legal administrations, as many pathways to legal immigration as they can. What do you see the city being able to do to continue to support the families of immigrants here in Boston?
Absolutely. No, I appreciate this question. And, I think we're living in extremely scary times right now. I was born in the Dominican Republic, came to Boston at the age of 3, and went through the citizenship process, right? All the way from undocumented to becoming a permanent resident to becoming an American citizen. So I really know the fear that our immigrant communities are going through right now, as you mentioned, not being too afraid to show up to school, being too afraid to go to work, and that's just not the Boston that we are, right? We want to make sure that we're a city for everyone, and that includes our immigrant communities, and our immigrant communities are in every level part of this city, right? We're elected officials, but we are business owners, we are police officers, firefighters, teachers, and we are everywhere in the city of Boston. And I think right now, I was very proud to, be part of a council last year that, stood up for our immigrant communities. And right now, as we're going into budget process, I know it's early, but going into the budget process, seeing how we can continue to support our immigrant community, seeing how we can invest more in legal aid, right, and making sure that our immigrant communities have access to lawyers. I think that's an area where we really need to focus on. And I think it's just about, again, building back that trust, being able to work with community leaders, being able to work with the elected officials to make sure that our immigrant communities have the resources that they need. We want to make sure that they continue to not just stay here, but thrive here in the city of Boston, as we're very much the fabric of the city of Boston.
In addition to immigration, what are the other things that you look forward to addressing as the new term gets underway?
Yeah, so I think for anyone who's followed my story, I've been very, I've prioritized our youth and our next generation, and I want to make sure that I continue to do that, continue to fight for our schools, making sure that we have high quality schools for everyone and all of our youth, making sure that our youth have access to summer jobs. I was very big on making sure that we make more investments, historic investments in summer youth jobs, and looking how we can expand that into year-round jobs to make sure that our youth are, staying busy, making some money, and then also being invested by living adults.
Do you share your city council comrades' concerns about the funding process for Madison Park? Do you share some of those concerns, and can you share a little of your thoughts about that?
Absolutely. I think I grew up 5 minutes away from Madison Park. This is a school that we need to continue to invest in. It's going to take some major investments for it to get to the place where we need, and we need the city's help. We need the state's help.
How long do we wait, though? How long is too long? When is when is it time to require the support that those?
I think there needs to be urgency, and I think there needs to be more urgency on this, right? But we want to make sure that we have a state-of-the-art building that our kids can really benefit from, and these are the jobs that we want our students to be able to get, right? We want people to go into labor, to go into union jobs, and it's the best way to get from low income to middle income. So, I'm very much supportive of renovating Madison Park, and that we do that.
Do you think that they will? Do you think that in this session you'll be able to get all the other community partners in state and federal, well, state and local, to help move this forward? Do you think?
I know that I stand with many of my colleagues on the city council who really care about this and who care about our BPS students. And again, this is going to be a place where our kids can really come and learn different trades. And then, the goal is to get them not into just jobs, but to get them into careers to really thrive here in the city of Boston. So I'm going to continue to push them for that. And I know that my colleagues on the council really care about this, and we're going to continue to fight for it.
Thank you. Rusi, I know that when we're talking about immigration, I know that's an issue that's very close to your heart, in that the Trump administration's changes in immigration status for Haitians, as well as many other groups in this country, have really affected our constituency, your constituency here in Boston. Can you kind of share some of the things that you've been doing and some of the things that the council have been doing to continue to support?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, unfortunately. But I do just want to say one last thing about the Mass School Building Authority. Obviously Madison Park is a school that should have been renovated. It should have been the top priority at the beginning of the administration. And we keep on playing political football with Madison Park. But I will say data has also come out that we are all everywhere in the state, we're paying into the Mass School Building Authority. And then they go out and they disperse funding to support the construction of schools around the Commonwealth. We have places in, I think, Bristol County have state-of-the-art vocational technical schools. And the data has come out recently that MSBA has been inequitably distributing funding to schools. So I think that's something that we need to really explore and to double down on, making sure that we, as a city, as an urban area with high percentage of English language learners, high percentage of Black and brown students, are getting our fair share from the money that we are putting into the Mass School Building Authority. We need their partnership, because rebuilding Madison Square Park to Madison Park High School to the extent that it needs to be, is close to $1 billion. And so that partnership, it's our dollars, that partnership is an important part of getting the school really built. And so I think it's important for us to really lean into the MSBA, into their own inequities in distributing funds. I think it's really important.
Thank you for that. And Minion, I wanted to come over to you, because
I still got my immigration
we're good. We'll come back to immigration since we're digging down on this. And let me ask my question first, though. So my question for you, as a representative of the district that Madison Park High School is in, and with your track record as a advocate for the community, when you were at HUD, you were not afraid to file a legal case against whomever was in the way of moving progress forward.
That's right.
For your then constituents who were part of those housing complexes that you helped. Is this an issue, the refurbishment of Madison Park High? Is this an issue you'd be willing to go to bat for and
absolutely
pull out the stops for?
Have been going to bat for it. But one of the differences that I'm going to fight for is we don't need a renovated Madison Park. We need a new state-of-the-art Madison Park, just like they do. If you look across the street at Northeastern, they're not renovating buildings for those students. They're getting new state-of-the-art buildings for the Northeastern students. Our students deserve the same equitably treatment with regard to a new Madison Park, not a renovated Madison Park. We always want to renovate stuff for us. Our children need a new state-of-the-art Madison Park. The other thing about it is, when you look at the state, and you look at the council president just talked about that article that came out where it said that money was going into schools around the state in the suburbs that didn't even need the money for those schools. So, and I'm not arguing for reparations at this point, but it
Not at this
is a reparations concept that when you continually ignore the Boston Public Schools with the dollars that are going to those schools around the state that don't need them, there is a way of looking at what should come back to the Boston Public Schools that should have come to the Boston Public Schools years ago to make sure that these schools, and look, when you look at the Boston Public Schools, when is the last time we have had a new state-of-the-art Boston Public School built for high school students? We haven't. And I think now it's time. I'm going to fight for it. I'm going to yell for it. I'm going to stand for it. Anything I need to do to have
You might even go into your lawyer background for it?
I don't think.
Okay, I'm not going to put any words in your mouth. Don't put any
Well,
words.
look,
You're going to do everything you can.
there's always an argument about inequitably. There's always an argument. When I sued the city and the Boston Housing Authority, it was because of the way they were treating the residents in South Boston and McCormick Public Housing Development and in Charlestown, and I didn't have a choice. We have a choice here. We don't need to resort to the courts. I think we can resort to the governor. I think we can look at the Secretary of Education, and we can look at that fund so that our children have state-of-the-art equipment, classrooms, just like other students around the state. And so yes, I'm willing to go to bat for it. We're going to bat for it right now, and won't stop until we get it. And that shouldn't be the only school that we
gets
look at
renovated,
in
or that
terms
receives
of
the
building new
funding, yes.
schools. We need to look around the state, and it's amazing when you go around the state and you look at the dollars. We need to look at those dollars from a business perspective and look at the dollars that have been going into those schools out in the suburbs that should have been coming to Boston. And then I think we need to sit down to come up with a formula to make sure we get a new Madison Park, not a renovated Madison Park, a new state-of-the-art Madison Park that our children deserve.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to move on to immigration again. I want to give you a chance to address the Trump administration's removal of protections for Haitians overall around the country and how it's affected our community here in Boston.
It's been plain and simple, the hatred that the Trump administration has towards a community that means so much to me, the Haitian community, towards black immigrants, towards black people, towards Latino people. The racial animus is clear, and it is an attempt to revert back to very ugly parts of this country's history. You know, I always tell people, if the moral argument can't win you over for why we are a country of immigrants, unless you are indigenous to this land or were forced here via slavery, everyone here has an immigrant story, and it is important that we acknowledge that. But even if that argument, the moral, the humanitarian argument, doesn't land with you, the economic argument should hit. If I could tell you about the calls of fears that I got from hospitals, from healthcare companies, about what it would mean if they lost their Haitian employees, what it would mean if they lost their immigrant employees. When we're talking about our bus drivers for our students, when we're talking about the transportation industry, healthcare industry, so many industries that rely on immigrant labor, we see that there's no real reason for the hatred this way other than to win at politics. Because unfortunately, immigration has been an issue that has brought some political success, where you keep on saying, you know,
The
they're the ones-
otherism,
yeah,
the
otherism. They're
otherism.
taking away your jobs. They're the reason why we have crime. When the data shows that
That is
people
not true.
that's
It's
not true.
It's just not true.
Immigrants are less likely to be involved with our carceral system, are less likely to be arrested, are less by a percentage of our incarcerated population. So all of these lies are just smoke and mirrors to distract us from that. We have a failed federal government that is trying to pin its failures on the back of immigrant communities here. I'm proud to be the president of the council that doubled down in investing nonprofit organizations that serve immigrant communities to help them with their legal issues. I'm proud to be part of a council where our membership speaks at least 4 different languages, where a number of us are either immigrants ourselves, like Councilor Santana, like Councilor Mejia, or who are daughters, the sons and daughters of immigrants, like myself, the daughter of Haitian immigrants. So we'll continue to work with our partners at the community level. Just because the federal government changes doesn't mean our values here in the city of Boston changes. We remain consistent and 10 toes down with our residents, saying that Boston is a welcoming city for all, that we are an inclusive city, and that we recognize that we are a city that is made stronger, better, and more economically viable because of the immigrants who start businesses, who send their kids to our schools, who are driving our buses, and who are an important part of the fabric of our city.
Thank you. Thank
Ron,
you.
can I say something real
Of
quick
course,
before
yes,
you move
yes.
on? I'm taking over your show, Ron.
No, that's okay. It's a conversation.
But I really
It's a
wanted to just
conversation,
really
by all
follow the string, because I think it, especially what is happening across this country, is that this whole idea of dividing and conquering, that's how they win. And I think that it's very dangerous right now for us to do this to each other. And Latinos, immigrants, LGBTQ, anyone who is different, we're the first line of defense. And what they're doing is learning how to attack us, because then they're going to come for the women. And after they come for it's for everybody. And so from an organizing standpoint, what we have to start doing is uniting collectively and building upon our collective power, because then and only then are we going to be able to stand against the hate that is coming down the pipeline. But if we don't work together, we're not going to survive this. And I think that that is the most important part, because you can't legislate hate. Like you can't, like the government is not.
Can't legislate out hate.
Right, but what we can as a people is say, I see you, I affirm you, I am going to stand with you, and I am going to fight for you. That is what this moment is calling for. And I think that that lesson, policymakers are not the ones that are going to drive it. It is going to be the people that stand in that gap and say, we got each other. And that is not part of the political discourse, but that is what we should really start really leaning into, is that piece of that work.
Here in Boston and around the country, we have seen grassroots organizations move mountains. Most recently, the No Kings rally, where
That's right.
7+ million people around the country in various different cities came together to call out the trends that are going on in our national government. So I was really happy to see that kind of a response. And I agree with you that the grassroots is where we must start. It has to be with the bottom up. And that has always been the way that we have changed things in this country, is when folks, the average person, the everyday person, we all come together and we fight for a better country. So I am hopeful. A lot of my friends and a lot of folks I talk to on a regular basis have a tremendous amount of fear for the future of our country, but they also have a tremendous amount of hope based on our ability to rally together. And I thank you guys for coming here and talking with me about this. I think, as you said, immigration has been used as a tool to separate us, to scare people. Oh, those folks are coming in here, they're eating the dogs. And this administration has always had a very hard ability when it comes to telling the truth. It's clear. So I think that we have to keep that in mind and do everything we can to get the truth out there, and that's kind of what this conversation is about. So thank you guys for being here. I want to move on to another subject that is near and dear to my heart. I've got various different members of my family who are on both sides of this issue, and it's the Franklin Park White Stadium issue. So I'm going to put it out there and say, I know everybody has had an opinion on it, but why don't we start on the far side, Henry, with you, since you haven't spoke recently, and share with us your thoughts on the Madison Park controversy. And for those who don't know, there was a private-public partnership that the city entered into to redevelop the stadium with the female soccer team. I'm sorry, the name of it is I forget the official name of the female soccer team, but the city put up around $100 million, I believe, in support of the development, city money, and then the soccer team puts up the rest, and it's a mutual use agreement that calls into question the ability for certain teams to practice there. So, Henry, what are your thoughts on this issue? And I know it's a hot button issue for many folks.
Yeah, so I've gone in support of this project. Again, my number one priority on the city council is our youth, and that includes our athletes. and making sure that our athletes have access to high quality fields. I mean, I think this is what that does. Live in District 7. I live a few blocks away from White Stadium. I also was not a track star, but I did track back in the day, and it was right in White Stadium. And it has decades and decades of.
What do you say to the residents to say now this is going to minimize the community's use? Like, as you said, you practiced there when you were a track athlete in your high school days. What do you say to the constituents of the city of Boston who say, listen, we are now outsourcing a community resource, we're taking money from a private company, and we're minimizing our community's use? Because those are the calls that I get from my relatives.
Yeah,
who are yelling at me.
I've gone in support of this project. Doesn't mean that this project is perfect, and I think there's still a lot of work that we need to do to make sure that, especially the residents who live in around the area, feel that their concerns are being heard. I think there also needs to be a lot of education that needs to happen in terms of what this project is, right? And how it's going to be divvied up and how it's going to be used by our athletes or by our BPS students, how it's going to be used by community. We are opening up areas of this park that haven't been open. This is going to still be a BPS owned, right? This is going to, the soccer team is going to maintain it over the next 10 years. So these are all different parts of the project that I think.
Talk to us a little bit about the economic commitment that was made and a requirement for minority vendors and vendors of.
Exactly. So I think there will be jobs that will be created within for community. There's going to be the soccer team is putting up investments to the Franklin Park Coalition. For every dollar that's sold, right, we get back. So this is going to be
For every dollar, just explain to me for every dollar that's spent, is it 50% of the? There's a certain percentage of the
we'll go
development money, the money that's being spent to develop the park that's supposed to go to Black, brown, and minority-owned.
Absolutely. So there's going to be exactly our local.
Do you know the percentage of that? Do you know what?
I don't know exactly the percentage, but I know that our locally owned Black and brown businesses will benefit from this, right? And again, this is any project this big and this scale is going to receive both opposition and support. And I think our job as elected officials is to make sure that all the voices are heard, and not just to check a checkbox, but to make sure that we're working with those community members to make to be part of the project.
Let me ask you one more question. I know that in the past, when the city and different state organizations have committed to a minimum amount of contracts going to vendors of color or companies of color, that they don't always live up to that commitment. Do you see the need for some kind of I don't mean another bureaucracy, but some type of a process to make sure that those commitments are lived up to, that those contracts do go as to the percentage required? Do you see a need for that? Or?
Absolutely. So everything is written down in a contract, right? So that's the thing. That's where we step up as elected officials, as city councilors, to make sure that we're holding them accountable to live up to those to live up to those expectations. And I think again, I'm going to be the first one. I support this project, but I will be the first one to stand up if those contracts are not being met, right? And again, this is going to be, I think, a good thing for our youth and for our students here in the city of Boston. I think it's going to be a good thing for Roxbury and a good thing for the city of Boston. But accountability is a big part of that, and I'll be the first one to say something if those contracts is not met up.
Yeah. Thank you for that. When I took a look at the plan and evaluated, there were still a lot of concerns that I felt needed to be addressed. And I want to come over here. I know, Julia, you've been kind of concerned about the White Stadium issue as well. Can you share some of the community's concerns and why this isn't necessarily the right course for the community?
Yeah, I mean, and thank you. And I agree with my colleague. There's still so much work to do.
It's not over.
It's not over, right?
Yeah.
And so our office, we've been really vocal about what this moment is calling for. There are some concerns. People have said we don't want a Fenway Park in Franklin Park, right? That people do not want a public space becoming privatized for someone else's gain. And I think that there's been a lot of misinformation about kind of like how we go about doing this, because just because we don't do the renovation, the vision that allows for the private partnership doesn't necessarily mean that the supplier and diversity piece of it goes away. we should still very much, regardless of whether or not we're working with a private partner, still have those diversity goals. So the way that things have been positioned feels like it's a this or nothing at all. Right now, the way the plan has been presented, there's an alternate plan that is being led by the NAACP and the Emerald Necklace and other community groups that are saying we could still have a state-of-the-art renovated white stadium for BPS students that does not require us to cede our land to a private entity. We don't need a bear garden in Franklin Park,
So
right?
but let's talk economics now. So how do we fund it with the realistic challenges that the
So-
city has economically?
So right now, there was already 50, I think it was 50 to 60 million dollars that was already set aside through the capital budget. That money is there. So the money has already been allocated. All this extra stuff is, I don't believe, is needed. And so from
You're saying
economics,
the budget grew based on
the
use
budget grew
of the professional team
as
that came in.
as the vision of it manifested. And so we have the money to do the basics renovations to provide our students with a state-of-the-art facility that would allow them to own it. Because what people have been saying is that, look at what happened at the Carter playground. That was supposed to be for our students. Now we're lucky if we can dip a toe in it. You know, let's look at what happened even when Chuck Turner stopped the highway and all of our, our ancestors fought for, really taking a stand, right?
Against putting the highway right down.
Right, down the south end. So here we are. This is just another scenario in which black and brown people are being plowed over, right, in a way that does not honor voice. And so for me, my posture is always going to be, what does the community want, and how do we get there? And I think that we're still in a very, we have an opportunity to redirect and utilize the resources that we have to renovate White Stadium, because what I don't want is people to say that I don't want White Stadium to be renovated. For the record, I believe that White Stadium deserves to be a state-of-the-art stadium, but we could do it with the resources that we have instead of creating a private-public partnership, because it's going to set the precedence here, right? They will start with that, and then it's going to continue to take up other land. So that's where I'm at.
Got it. Many of you see Phil.
Thank you. Especially for one who is in a butter, directly across the street from Franklin Park. I live in the house that my grandmother and grandfather fought for on Seaver Street. I wake up every morning, I see the camels right across the street from me. And so when I think about White Stadium and the soccer team coming, one of the first things that caught my eye about this private-public partnership was a $100 million investment going into the community. The 50% commitment that the owners made to the community. So we're talking about $50 million coming into our community, into our businesses, into our nonprofits, into our construction companies. And so I say, if someone wants to invest $100 million, and by the way, look, we've used Franklin Park when I was a youngster, Sly and the Family Stone. We used to fill that stadium up. There was no parking any place around it. There's still parking issues around it. We can work out, and the community has been saying they want a better transportation plan. They want an environmental study. There are things that still need to be done. But when I look at $100 million coming to my community and the 50% going to our businesses, I'm going to fight for those businesses to get the $50 million. Tomorrow morning, I meet with a group of businesses. We're putting together the District 7 White Stadium Task Force, because the businesses have to ensure that that $50 million, the 50% that the owners committed to come to the community, comes to the community. I was in a barbershop Saturday, and here's what was interesting. There was a soccer game on, a women's professional soccer team. The men in the barbershop were saying, I can't wait until that soccer team comes to Franklin Park, because I'll be going to their soccer games. I've got a young girl in my church, she's 14, just started playing soccer. How can I tell Jelani that she can't dream about one day playing soccer up the street from her house in Franklin Park in a brand new state-of-the-art stadium. So I say, if someone wants to invest $100 million in my community, with the way the community is being starved now, our businesses are barely making it, I say bring that $100 million, make sure we get the 50% to come to our businesses so that our businesses can thrive as they do in Foxborough.
Okay, I got one more challenge for you, Minnie.
Go on.
And I hear you. I hear you. Money is good. Resources is good. And I think private-public partnerships can work. But what about the traffic, brother? We all drive through there. Anytime you drive through that neighborhood, and I do all the time, every week, between 4 and 6 p.m., the traffic is horrendous because of rush hour. You're not going to widen those streets. You're not going to move those houses. It's a tight neighborhood. What do you say to the transportation?
I woke up this morning, I looked out the window, and I saw that traffic blocked. It was all the way from Maple at the light.
Yeah,
Blue
yeah,
light.
yeah.
We always are going to have a traffic problem around Franklin Park, Seaver Street. I do think there's a ways, and they just hired a young brother to plan the traffic and the parking around the stadium. I don't think anyone said that there's going to be parking coming from outside of Boston around White Stadium. Look, we know that there's always been an issue with Franklin Park, one of the most attractive zoos in New England. We're always going to have transportation parking issues. I've lived with it all of my life. My grandmother and grandfather lived. It's not anything new to us. But I do think the investment of $100 million is new to us. The largest investment that I've seen come to this community over my lifetime. And so if there are going to be investments into our businesses, into our construction company, into our nonprofits to the amount of $50 million, we'll work through the parking because we're always going to
You
have
believe
parking.
that task force will be able to, like when I was asking Henry about the ability to make sure that commitment was actually lived up to, you feel that this task force is the avenue to help ensure that?
We've got some heavyweights on this
Okay,
task force.
all right, all right.
We're going to meet in the morning, and we'll make an announcement. But I do think that the folks that are working on this task force are folks that will make sure that the commitment happens. And let me just put it to you this way. If we don't get that 50% commitment coming into the community, then that soccer team is going to have a problem.
Got it, got it. Well, I'm sure the community will hold you to that. So
I want them to.
Okay, well, great. Thank you. I want to talk about a couple more things. We're coming up close to the end of our session here in our time. I want to thank you guys for being here. But I want a couple quick thoughts from each of you on the mass and cash issue. I guess we can start on this side since we were just on this side. Henry, just kind of come across mass and cash. Short take on solutions or thoughts?
I think there's a lot of work. This is, I think the city has done a lot of good things. I think this is an area where we've still failed. And I think, as I'm approaching my second term, one area I'm very focused on is how do we extend the recovery process. I've been able to meet, as Chair of Public Safety and Criminal Justice on the City Council, over the last several months, I've been able to meet with many residents who were at Mass and Cass, staying out there unhoused, right, and have gone through the process and now have a success story. And one common theme that I hear from those folks is that they had an 18-month, 2-year process of recovery. So I think our recovery process is we need to expand it, and that's an area that I'm looking to work with local organizations, work with the administration, the state to make sure that happens.
Thank you. Ruthie?
We do need to find a recovery campus relocated. It's probably the hardest thing for us to do. We had one on Long Island when the bridge was up. The bridge had to be taken down for safety reasons. The city of Quincy has blocked our ability to get the bridge back up through legal hassle after legal hassle after legal hassle. We need a place where people can get the full spectrum of the continuum of care, from initial detox to long-term recovery to how then you reintegrate into society by having job training. The majority of the people who are in mass and cash are people who are living with the disease of addiction. And one way that you got the biggest way to resolve or try to address the issue of addiction is through treatment. So we need more long-term treatment facilities and places where people can go and trust that they can get the full spectrum of care that comes with grappling with the disease of addiction. Because right now what we're seeing is the effects on obviously the people who themselves are living with the addiction, but also the residents who are waking up to needles and to more on their front doorsteps, and they shouldn't have to deal with that. Whether they live in the South End, whether they live in Roxbury. My office has been doing a lot of work with Ramsey Park in Roxbury and with the Cooper Community Center there to make sure that young kids can go and enjoy the park and go to daycare at the Cooper Community Center without the disruptions of people suffering from the disease of addiction using and abusing the park.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. So a number of things on the mass and cast front. So I always talk about from a place of understanding this holistically. You know, my cousin died of an overdose, right? I have family members who are locked up right now because of, you know, the disease that we're talking about that's happening on mass and cast. And so for me, this is really personal. And I think what I would love to see as for us to really think about outside the box. We need to be a little bit more aggressive with our attorney general and making sure that we're looking at the doctors who are prescribing opioids to begin with. I'd like to start getting at the root causes of things, because I think a lot of the kicking down the can down the street, you know, everything is centralized in one location. We also need to decentralize services. And I also think that as a body, we need to start realizing that even though you may not live in the district that this is happening, the decisions that we make around mass and cast impacts all of us. So I think that that's also an area for the council to really start thinking about mass and cast collectively, not just the district councilors that abut it, because it's spilling over all across the city of Boston. And then I think we also need to start thinking about this, you know, regionally. You know, the state really needs to start stepping up. Right now,
Obviously, a lot of the folks who come
yeah,
to Mass and Cast are from all around the state.
and even outside from Rhode Island and New
Other
Hampshire,
states,
right?
yeah.
So what we have to really start thinking about is this shared responsibility around mass and cast, because everybody looks to the Boston City Council, but there's so many other players that have a role and accountability to help us deal with this issue. And I think we're not going to get to where we need to be unless we start holding everybody their feet to the fire on this issue.
And getting all the community.
And
partners.
everybody has to be engaged in that process.
Minard, last thoughts on Mass and Cast?
No, I
as we
agree
wrap it
with
up?
what the council did when they passed that resolution for the recovery campus. Some cities had called it a care campus where folks are being treated. I also think we need to cut off the drug sales, the sales of drugs that come into Mass and Cast. I think that's a place where we can begin to focus more on. But with regard to the care campus, I think it's critical. The council president just mentioned Long Island. And you know, one of the things I'm going to do as city councilor is think out of the box. So they have a boat that comes from Hingham into Boston, bringing folks to work every day. That boat brings folks, in fact, it passes Long Island on the way into Boston, bringing folks to work. I don't see why we can't have a boat that can take folks to Mass and Cast. The MBTA has that boat running all day. Why can't we have a boat that takes folks to Long Island, get some buildings on Long Island fixed up so that we can transport them? The bridge may not ever happen, but we can still have boats that can go back and forth to Mass and Cast. Ron, you know, you're on a boat quite a bit.
I remember
right?
Menino trying to get that bridge built decades ago.
No, but I'm talking about a boat. I'm not even talking about the bridge.
boat. There
You
is
know,
the
you're on a
ferry.
boat quite a bit.
Yeah,
You know the
sometimes.
boat that you're
Yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah.
back and
Boat, I
forth.
want to be on that boat.
That's
Like a
boat.
ferry.
Y'all
Boat.
go fishing
Ferry, it's a
together. Y'all go
ferry,
fishing
it's a
together.
ferry.
That's what that is.
Yeah. But no.
But look, the ferry ride to Martha's Vineyard, Ron, is not. The ferry ride to Long Island is shorter than the ride to Martha's Vineyard. So I say, let's look at some out-of-the-box ways that we can begin a care campus so that folks can really get the treatment that they need and deserve.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So our time is running short, but I wanted to thank all of you for joining us here on GBH Amplifies the Bay State Banner. I want to thank you, City Councilor at Large Henry Santana, City Council President Ruthie Lugine, City Councilor at Large Julia Mejia, and our new District 7 City Councilor, the Reverend Minard Culpepper. I want to thank all of you for being here and sharing your thoughts about the new legislative agenda for our city of Boston. So thank you so much. I also want to talk a little bit about our next program coming up on December 11th. We're going to have our next filming here of the next GBH Amplifies the Bay State Banner. And then we're going to tackle the serious issue of the silencing of black journalists in this country. over the past 6 to 9 months, many professional black journalists who have broadcast programs or a high-level print journalists have been silenced, have lost their jobs for speaking against the administration. So we're going to have some high-profile national journalists. We've got Tiffany Cross confirmed, former CNN, MSNBC anchor, I believe. So, she has her own program now, as well as White House correspondent Emily McMorris, Philip Lewis from the National Association of Black Journalists in Washington, D.C., as well as Astide Herndon, who is with Vox and a contributor to the New York Times, as well as many, many more. So that's coming up right here on December 11th at the GBH's Newsfeed Cafe. We want to encourage everybody to come down for the taping of that program. We're also going to have a second portion following our taping here that will include many local journalists as well from the Globe, CVB, here our GBH partners, and then many of our community newspapers, El Mundo, Dorchester Reporter, South End and Bay Windows. So we really want to have a serious conversation about how the removal of these journalists from the national landscape is affecting our community. I also wanted to thank our production partners here at GBH, the wonderful team that helps us put the program together. I want to thank all of you down at the main offices in Brighton, as well as right here at the Newsfeed Cafe studio. So thank you guys for working with us at the Bay State Banner. I am your host, Ronald Mitchell, editor and publisher of New England's Bay State Banner News, and I want to thank you for listening and watching today. It's been a wonderful program. I want to thank my guests, and we'll see you next time.